Welcome, everyone, to Chirping Zebras, episode 74. Virtually alongside Gino Benda Jr., Mark Riley, alongside our producer, Josh Dolan, coming to you from the interwebs. And we want to thank right off the hop our sponsor, the Referees Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And also thank AOA Studios for always being what they are, a fantastic place to tape a podcast. And they do awesome work up there, so we always want to thank them. And we also want to remind you to like and subscribe on YouTube. Smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube. And also follow us on all the social medias. We are on the Facebook, the Instagram, and of course, Gino,
the TikTok.
Absolutely. So we want you to hit the follow there and keep up to date with all the stuff that we're doing here. And last week's episode, Andy Brickley, great guy. I mean, playing golf with him was awesome.
Excellent.
Just all around, just such a knowledgeable guy and in the sport of hockey, and just, I mean, downright a great guy.
And a good golfer.
A very good golfer. Yeah, he was 4 over. He was
pretty
over. I was 2 over after 4.5 holes, but then the wagon wheels came out.
I was -4. -4 balls I lost.
yeah, right. Yeah. Although you did hit some that, some drives should have had stewardesses on them. They were.
Yeah, I overdrove them.
Tell the truth. Did you actually pay for those balls, or did somebody get
I acquired them, Your Honor.
Yeah,
he didn't pay for anything.
No,
and you know what?
No.
Without further ado, we have another great guest this week, and we're super excited to have him. And he was a major league umpire for many years and also a hockey guy from Minnesota. We want to welcome Tim Tschida to Chirping Zebras. Welcome, Tim.
Welcome. Thanks, guys. It's great to be with you. Been a while since I've chirped about hockey, but you're going to find out I know more than you think.
I got a feeling that you do, and we're excited to get some insight not only into your hockey experience, but also into Major League Baseball umpiring and umpiring in general, because it's similar to hockey, but obviously different at the same time.
Absolutely. We all started off, I've said for years that nobody grows up dreaming of becoming an umpire or a referee. You wind up becoming one somehow. And usually the first time is reluctant. You're a reluctant volunteer. A friend of yours is in a jam. A guy didn't show up. I just need you to do this one game for me, please. Okay, I'll help you out. And the next thing you know, you find that you, for whatever reason, you like it, and then you can't get enough of it. And then you start working with people that are passionate about it, and it kind of takes you over.
Well, we're excited to hear all your stories and your journey up until the up to the major leagues, because it's like any official, you don't just umpire your first game and jump right into Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park, and same thing for hockey.
Right.
Exactly. It's I don't know if there's anything that properly prepares you, for that, that first Red Sox Yankee game on the NBC Game of the Week, which you guys are maybe too young to even remember.
Oh, I remember those.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yeah.
You're a little older than you look, then, I guess. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember watching those on black and white TV with my dad.
I did too. See, with a bag of Doritos and a large bottle of Pepsi at home on Saturday afternoon. That was the only national TV contract that baseball had, and the people in baseball we called it the game of the world, because the ESPN wasn't in business yet, and this was still before TBS and WGN and WOR, but then they all kind of got in line. But baseball was afraid back then that too much TV would keep people away from the park. Little did they know that it did just the opposite. I forget what year it was. It was like 84. And the cover of Sports Illustrated had a panoramic shot of Wrigley Field, and the caption read 15 million. And Major League Baseball attendance had gone over 15 million that year, and they thought that would never, ever happen, ever. 15 million. Now you got 30 teams that are drawing 3 million each. And it the opposite. That's when the people said, I got to go to Fenway Park, man. You got to go to Fenway. You got to go to Wrigley. I got to go here. I got to go there. Then these people started doing these go to every ballpark once a year we go to a different ballpark until we've
Right.
seen them all, kind of things, and that never used to be. Now it's part of family vacations and things like that, and hopefully they'll keep it that way. They'll keep it a family friendly and not fight over money and everything else. But anyway, great to be here. As you can see, I can ramble on with the best of
Right
my
on.
show right
No,
now.
we love it.
The best.
We love it.
I can veer off the subject like nobody's business.
And I'm sure Fenway Park was your favorite park to do games in, right?
I definitely, I thoroughly enjoyed working there. For when you worked in Fenway and Yankee Stadium, you really felt like you were in the big leagues. That Fenway. The one thing about Fenway that they've got, it's the best lighting in baseball. They've got their standards are lower because the stadium itself is lower, but they're bright,
Right.
and they don't lose balls in the lights because they're not that high. If a guy hits just an average fly ball, it gets above the lights, and they can see it fine, in a dark sky, versus other places where those light towers are much, much, much higher. That's where they lose balls in the light. But when you walked on the field in Fenway, you could feel the lights. You could just feel you were in the show. It was like, holy cow, this is why I worked in Wichita. This is why I worked in
Right.
all these other places to get here. And Yankee Stadium had the same feel. People would always say, "What's your favorite ballpark?" Well, I liked every ballpark, to be honest with you. I liked because they were all in the big leagues. But if you're gonna make me name, the two tops, I would have to go with Fenway and Old Yankee Stadium. New Yankee Stadium was nice, but Old Yankee Stadium was really cool. That was really cool working there. Speaking of Southie, do they still have that old Victorian whorehouse speakeasy that the cops used to go to after they got off their shifts? Is that still there?
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, okay. I swear to God,
Is that called the Chippewa Club?
I don't know what it's called, but we were walking out of Abe and Louie's, and it had closed it up, and one of our guys said, "Hey, what time is it?" And this car goes by, and he goes, "It's time to buy a fucking watch." And we go, yeah. Lost you, right? So the guy turns around and he comes back, and it's two undercover Boston cops who had been working the game. He knew where we were, so he was busting our chops, so we didn't realize it was them.
Oh, that's
Come on,
fun.
let's go. I'll give you guys a ride. So he's driving through town with the lights on and everything, and we wind up over at this old Victorian house over in South Boston, and it's got the storm shelter entrance where you come in down through the basement kind of
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
and he gets to the door and he taps this kind of like a code knock kind of thing, and somebody opens the door, and hey, come on in. So they go in, and the downstairs is this one big bar, like it was a public place, and it was owned by a husband and wife who were both Boston coppers, and that's where they all went after, and they all started coming in. All of a sudden, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, the place is packed with all these cops that had gotten off of work. And I think the funniest part about it was Don Denkinger looks at me and says, "You're not going to believe this, but I've been here before." Oh God, yeah. I mean, that's in the top 5 of craziness of.
Only in Southie, God's country. I love it.
Hey, I loved every minute I went to Boston, even though they didn't love me all the time, but I loved going there.
We're hard on the umps, squeezing them blue.
Yeah, but it's an educated crowd. That's what I always liked about it. Was
Good point. Right.
I tell people it took me a long time to figure out why New York, Boston, Philadelphia, both New Yorks actually, Boston and Philly, it just always seemed more intense at those ballparks. And why is it? I mean, you can work a sellout crowd anywhere around the league, and it's not as loud. And then finally one night, I was working home plate, and it was like a 2-2 pitch with guys on second and third, 2 outs, and the pitcher let go of the ball, and the place went silent because everybody's watching the game. You don't see them putting up signs saying "stand up, make noise," let them hear you. They don't do that in those towns because they don't have to.
Right.
The fans will decide that. We'll let you do something good. We'll cheer. Otherwise, don't tell us when to cheer. And that's where I figured it out was, because There's a lot of great ballparks around out there, but the atmosphere in those four ballparks is definitely uh, in its own category as far as the other places go.
I would say that for hockey in Canada, right? Like
Yeah.
Canada's the
Yes.
same way.
Yeah.
And like
Exactly.
those guys, like when I refereed up there in the minors, like it was
Right.
a different yell, right? They
Yeah.
yelled at the right thing. I'm like, oh, all right.
And
They get it.
they appreciated good effort.
Right,
They
exactly.
recognize good play, and
Right.
some of these places, it's like people say, "Well, you got to love Wrigley." I go, Wrigley Field is the world's largest outdoor tavern, is all it is. It's there just happens to be a baseball game going on. Everybody's talking when you're on the field. There's this constant buzz, because everybody's talking to each other during the game. They're not watching anything.
Right.
And then all of a sudden somebody gets a hit. They go, yeah, base hit. And then they go back to their conversations. And it has nowhere near a good friend of mine from Boston. Maybe you know Eddie Miller. I don't know if you know Eddie Miller at all. Eddie works for Twins Enterprises. They make the hats. They got the store right across Yawkey Way from the ballpark.
Yeah.
Eddie's been with them for a long, long time. Where they sell the jackets and jerseys and all that stuff. And he said, you go to a Red Sox game and you could sit out front, and every person walking in, they could tell you who the starting pitchers were for both teams and what their ERA was. And that's just it's a figure of speech, obviously, but that's the difference. That is the difference, and that's very, very unique.
So, Tim, one thing I wanted to ask you off the hop was So you refereed hockey in the off seasons out in Minnesota.
I did. Yes, I did.
So refereeing hockey and umpiring, although they're, the sports are very different, what are the similarities between the officiating, from each sport?
Good question. The similarities, I think, because baseball plays a lot of games and hockey plays, not as many, but more than football and that kind of thing. And I always felt hockey officials are very much appreciated because you have to be an athlete to be good at it. Hockey officials are clearly the best athletes of any professional sports officiating that there is. That's a no-brainer. That's easy. Hockey people tend to make each other part of the family. If you're working in hockey, you're part of the family because you can skate. Baseball, we were part of the family because we saw each other so often. You didn't have time. You couldn't carry a grudge or remember a guy because you're going to be back there tomorrow at 105 for the next game. And you just go on and on and on. And we were always part of that family. That no longer exists, but I did notice that when I started to get acquainted with some of the NHL guys, and you could just tell, you could watch, the interactions between the officials, where sometimes the things that hockey officials say to players, if they said that to a baseball player now or a football or basketball player, they'd be calling their agent, they'd be calling their mommy and saying, he swore at me. And sometimes that was the easiest way to diffuse the situation, was to just get in his face and let him have it and walk away.
Right.
And all that's changed.
Yes.
And that's too bad. Hockey still has it, I think, more than any of the other sports. But even then, they got, I've talked to a few of my friends. They said it's not the way it used to be. But now you got to be, you're on camera all the time, and microphones and everything else. Everybody's so conscious about, being politically correct all the time. So, but I thought the interaction between hockey officiating and coaches was very similar to umpiring and baseball managers. And you also have a tendency to you come up together.
Right.
A guy that you have coaching this particular season, you had him 3 years ago in some other league in some other place. There's head coaches in the NHL that I'm sure guys had at lower levels in the AHL or the ECHL or any of those things.
I know.
So
I know 80% of them. Yeah, just because.
Yeah.
Of that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they know your which buttons to push on you and which ones to stay away from. And they know sometimes you can diffuse a situation just by looking over there.
Right.
They're chirping. There, I stole your name, but they're chirping off the bench or out of the dugout. And after you've got some dirt in your shoes, you can just look over there, and they've seen that look before,
Right.
and they go, all right, back it off, guys. Let's go, move on, play on. Hockey has a real advantage too, where the good coaches. I watch a different game when I go to a hockey game. I go to a few Wild games here every year, and I watch the benches. I watch the officials and I watch the benches and see how they're responding, how they're interacting with each other, which guy is a jerk and which guy is fair. We always had a saying about coaches. He's fair. He lets you work. All right. If he has a beef, it's probably going to be a legitimate one because he's fair. And when he gives it to you, he picks up and he moves on and he goes back to coaching his team. He doesn't whine about it for the next 5 minutes. You're costing me everything. It's just they wanted that call, they didn't get it. Okay, and they move on. And that's what men do. It's a man's game. And all
Love that.
professional, all of them are that way, and you got to behave that way. And the difference today now too is coaches and managers are I don't know what the word is, afraid, but they're afraid of their star players laying down on them. So sometimes they back them even when they're wrong, and that didn't used to be. They
Right.
would say to their star player, "Hey, he got it right. Let's go." And because they're afraid that guy, if that guy lays down on him and commits mutiny, he's going to take two or three guys with him, and the next thing you know, he's out of a job. One of the best guys I've
Very
ever
true.
known throughout playing and managing ever was Terry Francona, and those guys turned on him.
Yeah.
They were up in the clubhouse eating chicken and drinking beer, and to one of the greatest guy they could ever play for, and they're selfish. Today's players are a lot more selfish than they were, 20 years ago, and
Make a
so I
lot
don't
of
know. I
money.
mean, I took it a long way around the barn on that question,
No,
but
that's a great answer. I love that.
uh,
You hit a lot of great points.
well, it's I watched another thing in the other night. When Bryce Harper kicked the commissioner out of the clubhouse, which I thought was one of the most classless things I've ever seen or heard of.
Right.
I bargained when I was working. I've been in on those negotiations, and that's not how you do it.
Mm.
You're not going to intimidate anybody. You're not going to yell and scream at each other because it comes time you got to make a deal because everybody needs to get paid. Okay, so if you think you got it, guess what? I hope they don't do it
Mm.
because sports on TV and everything else, people will find something else to do. I lived through '94, and it took them a long time to get it back. And I don't know if they could get it back. People are just saying, you know what? I'll turn on some other sport. I'll go to a casino. I'll do something else. I don't need it, and especially if I'm hearing a guy who's got more money than God telling the commissioner that we don't want to negotiate with you. You know, and I always go back to this experience I had back in whatever it was season. I don't remember the year, but Mike Piazza was the backup catcher in Oakland at the end of his career, and it was like he'd already been with the Marlins and the Mets and the Dodgers and everything, and he'd already had a great career. And he was the backup, and it was early September, and he came out to warm up the pitcher in about the eighth inning, and I said, "Well, Michael, I'm not going to see you the rest of the year." I said, "Is this it for you? You going to take it to the house?" He goes, "Timmy, I want to play one more year, just one." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I don't care. I don't have to be the everyday guy. It doesn't have to be a playoff team. I don't care, but I want one more." I said, "How come?" He said, "Because I'm having more fun this year than I've ever had in my life. And if I
Okay.
could do it all over again, I wish for the first 7, 8 years of my career that I wasn't such a tight ass prick, worrying about my stats and money and everything else. And all I was miserable. I was miserable. And it goes like that." He said, "It's over. I'm a young man, but I can't play this game anymore. Maybe one more year." And that's what I'm trying to instill in all these young players. And I'm having fun doing it because Oakland had a bunch of young guys. And he said, "God, I'd love to have that back." And I think back on my career and the certain players, and that's what I see in today's game, and I don't like it. I see a lot of guys that only have fun when they hit a home run. Otherwise, they're slamming helmets and slamming bats and yelling at somebody and challenging pitches and all this garbage that they're doing. They're ruining their own show, and I hope they figure it out. I hope they figure it out fast because we're in a pretty impatient society. You know, people, the economy being what it is, and everybody's struggling, and they're going to feel sympathy for these people. They're out of their mind if they think that's going to happen. It's not going to happen. So they better start talking, and they better start treating the commissioner with respect, whether you like him or not. He is the commissioner.
That's a great point. I think in every sport, I think we see that selfishness, that what's in it for me or what my stats are. Now, certain like baseball, especially, it is an individual kind of sport in that everyone's not playing for themselves; they're playing for the team. But like
Right.
hockey, if all five guys succeed, the team succeeds. If one guy succeeds, they might lose all their games.
Right.
So but that selfishness is definitely there.
Yeah, it is there, and you see these guys, you see certain players. I love watching. I had the privilege of umpiring George Brett and Robin Yount and Paul Molitor and David Winfield and Roberto Alomar and Ken Griffey Jr. Guys that just had a ball playing to me. They loved playing, and they were the superstar players don't mess with the umpires. They don't need us. I can't hurt them. They're gonna they'll succeed with or without me. It doesn't matter who's behind the plate that day for them. It's the marginal player. The guy, the 25th man you know, who's struggling to bat 200 and he's lucky to have that 25th uniform. He's the guy that's gonna be questioning umpires because he doesn't have any margin for error. But I just watched these guys today, and even the star players are. What are you miserable about? They're paying you to do this, man, and they're paying you a lot of money to do this. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think you would be cashing checks like that? Holy cow!
They need that. They need that catcher from Major League too. Gosh darn Major Leagues, boys. Right?
Exactly. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah,
Right?
they need Kevin Costner from Bull Durham to come out and talk to the mound a little bit, and get him straightened out if he can.
Now, you mentioned a lot of superstars. I know you were behind the plate for Nolan Ryan, one of his no hitters, correct?
The seventh one, yeah.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
what was that like? I mean, it just because a lot of younger people don't realize how good he was.
Yeah, and Nolan, it's too bad because he only pitched on two playoff teams. I mean, he pitched on the '69 Mets that won the World Series. And I think he was the fourth starter there. They had Seaver and Matlack and Jerry Kuzma, and Nolan was young and pretty raw, but they beat the Orioles, the Miracle Mets. And then he wasn't on another good team until Houston, and they made the '86 playoffs. And I think he was only in the postseason twice in his whole career.
Wow.
And Nolan, that whole day was it was quite a day actually. Our day started. I was working with John Shulock and Drew Coble and Mark Johnson, and we played a lot of golf that year. We would get up early and play golf as much as we possibly could. And whenever I played golf on the day of a game, it didn't matter if I had the plate or not. I just wanted to be teed off by 7 o'clock. So I'm back by noon at the latest, and if I am tired, I can take a nice nap and be perfectly ready to go out and work. Well, this particular day, I've got the plate and I've got Nolan, and we're in Dallas, and it's hot and it's sticky, and these guys are dragging and they're slow, and I'm like, "God, we didn't tee off till like 10 o'clock, and I was the junior guy on the crew. I couldn't say anything, and the last place I wanted to be was on that golf course. I'm standing on the 13th green, and it's like 2:45, and I'm sweating bullets, and I'm thinking, I got Nolan tonight, and the fans come out for Nolan, and it's kind of a sideshow because they're going to stay with him for 6 or 7 innings no matter what, because he's still better than anything they got down in that bullpen. So it's a full night's work for an umpire. And we never even went back to the hotel. We went straight to the ballpark. And I went to the park and I showered and I curled up in my locker and took about a 45-minute cat nap. And I can't wait for this thing to get started so I can get it over. And
Yeah.
So Nolan had this little pregame ritual. He first of all, Bobby Valentine brought the lineup cards out, and
Bobby
he
V.
said, "Bobby V,"
Love it.
and Bobby and I got along great. And he goes, Nolan's back is stiff. He goes, I'm going to run him out there, but I've got somebody warming up right away. And if he can't go, I'll bring this guy in right away. We won't have a delay or anything. And they didn't know what to expect from Nolan. So Nolan comes out, and I can't illustrate it because we don't have a big enough screen. But when Nolan warmed up, he'd take the big wind up, and then he would just throw lollipops up. He just threw humpback, like he was playing long toss. He didn't throw a fastball. He didn't throw a real pitch during his warm up. He was just. I don't think he even warmed up in the bullpen much. I mean, with actual game speed, he didn't do that. So, and then he'd look at the catcher, and go give it the old, throw it down, and then he would lollipop one more up there, and I'm back there going, "Let's go." Well, then he would always walk in to the front area of home plate on the grass, and he would put his feet down one at a time and kind of kick at it to check the footing, And while he was doing that, he would be looking at the visitors' dugout as if to say, "Don't think about bunting today, okay?" It was just a ritual. It was an absolute ritual. So, and I gotta backtrack. First, the Rangers take the field. Yeah, right. Then Nolan takes the field. It was all choreographed. And I'm back there going, "Give me a break, man. I can't take much more of this. I haven't even called a pitch yet." And and so he gets through the first inning. Now he's pitching against the '92 Blue Jays, or the '91 Blue Jays, which essentially was the same team that won back to backs in '92 and '93. World great team.
I was at
Great.
Joe Cotter's game. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, yeah. So he gets through the first inning, 3 up, 3 down, and in the second inning, he struck out the side, all on called third strikes, all curveballs, and undisputed. And the hitters didn't even look back. And I noticed Franco was at second, and Houston was the shortstop, and Bouchel was the third baseman, and they were all looking at each other and they were smiling as they were running to the dugout because they knew. People always talked about Nolan's fastball.
Yeah.
His curveball was devastating. His curveball was at about 95, 96,
Jesus.
and it was straight 12-6. You couldn't hit it. You absolutely could not hit it. And conversely, people always talked about Bert Blyleven and his great curveball. He had one he threw from here. He had a 3/4, and he had a sidearm that he'd bring every now and then, and he could wrap that thing around anything. But his fastball is what made him successful because he could throw it for a strike whenever he wanted. He could put that ball right where he wanted and just set him up. Well, if Nolan's getting the curveball over, anybody that's watched him pitch enough knows that this could be a special night because they will swing at every fastball. Because they see a fastball out of the hand, they're hacking because they can't hit that curve, and they know it. And we're going along. It was kind of funny that the old stadium and the original ballpark, and not the ballpark analogy, it was just Texas Ranger Stadium, they called it. It was a dump. And the center field bleachers were like they do in Fenway. They block them off for background, to see. I don't know if they still do that.
Yeah, they do that in the corner. Yeah.
Yeah, in the daytime.
Yep.
And yeah. Well, they always did that in Texas. Only people just kept coming to the game. They were listening on radio, and they were filing in the 5th, 6th, 7th inning because they heard there's a no-hitter going on. So they're hanging. The people are hanging. The place holds 40,000. I'll bet you there was 55,000 people in that stadium. It was just crazy. And it was about the 7th inning, and I just said to myself, I was aware that he had a no-hitter going. I was aware of that. We disagreed on one pitch, and we didn't have an issue. We didn't have a confrontation over it. But I talked to him about it the next couple years later when he was an executive with the Rangers, and it was a spring training game, and we were in a rain delay, and we're sitting in the dugout. He was in civilian clothes, and I said, "Well, I owe you one strike from that no hitter." And he goes, "Yep, it was on." And he named the guy, he named the pitch. And I said, "Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, I remember." And it was a deal where he was pounding inside on a left-hand batter, and I got the count to 2-1, and it should have been 1-2. I missed one. The other two, I got him right. So, but he was so powerful that night, he didn't need me. And all I said to myself after that was, don't change anything. Don't start going crazy back here, because if I reach out there and I start calling this kind of stuff strikes, it just takes the credibility out of it. And because baseball people will look at it and go, well, hell, if I could get that call, I'd throw a no hitter too, So, and then again, God, you can't miss a strike. You just can't miss a strike, and so yeah, it was pressure. It was, I wasn't shaken by it, but I felt it. There's no question about it. And I kept thinking, if they break this thing up, it's going to be some broken bat flare over the second baseman's head the opposite way, or something cheap. And I back in those days, I always threw the ball back to the pitcher. And I will be proud to say that the catchers in the league always said that I had the best arm. I was young. I was a younger guy, and I enjoyed throwing the ball. And Mike Stanley was catching, and the last hitter was Robbie Alomar, and that's going to be a tough last out because Robbie's a good player, and he fouled about 3 off, and I was down to 1 ball, and the kid was bringing me more baseballs, so I didn't want to break the rhythm here, so I handed the ball to Stanley, and I went to the kid and got the other baseballs, and Stanley's standing there with the ball. He looks back at me, he goes, he goes, "You've been throwing it back all night. We're not changing that right now."
Love that.
I said, "Okay, well, okay, Steamer, I got you." So sure enough, I hit him, and then the next pitch, Robbie swung and missed, and that was it. And it was kind of funny. Um, I just kind of stood there. I never even made a call. That was it. Game's over. And I kind of just took in the moment and watched the celebration a little bit and walked off the field slowly. And I get, first of all, as soon as the guy swings and misses, Shulock's working second. Now, John's been around for a long time, and he's running in toward the mound on a dead sprint. He's never sprinted a day in his life. Umpiring. And he's flying right now. John actually played in the minor leagues in the Twins organization. He's probably one of the better athletes to ever become a major league umpire, and he's flying. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? Please don't tell me you had timeout or something, and I got to go through another pitch here.
Oh,
And
geez.
he comes by and he grabs the rosin bag on the fly and just almost trips and just runs right past me into the clubhouse. He's gone, and it's a kind of a long walk up to the dressing room. So I get to the dressing room. John's already in there, and he's telling our clubhouse guy, "Okay, we need 24 balls, all autographed by Nolan. I need 4 unused tickets." He's telling them all the novelty stuff that we need to get from this game.
You always need that guy.
And I'm just over there cracking a beer. Okay, John, you do whatever you want, man. Get me 1 ball. I'll take 1 ball. That's all I need. And so. About that was May 1st of 91. It happened to be the same day that Ricky Henderson broke the all-time steals record. So Nolan kind of rained on Ricky's parade that day. But it was kind of funny that about later on that year, a guy knocks on the door. It's probably August or something, and asks for me. And yeah, I don't know who he is. He's a photographer, and he at the end of the game, he went up to the very, very top of the stadium and took a panoramic shot down onto the field where Alomar was about right there for the strike 3. Okay, and he got the whole field in the picture, and he had every person, every player, coach, whoever was in that photo autograph next to their picture except me. He didn't have. He was waiting for me, and he said, "I wonder if you'd sign this for me." I said, "Well, on one condition." What's that? I said, "I want one of those prints for myself." So, "Oh God, you got it, man. That's easy." I said, "Okay, sure. Anything else you want me to sign? I'd be happy to do it." And it was called The Moment, and it was like 10:21 Central Daylight Time. Nolan Ryan strikes out Roberto Alomar to complete his 7th no hitter. All a glip, and it was saying he threw 122 pitches, X amount of balls, X amount of strikes, and so I got the picture, and Nolan signed it for me, and he signed the unused tickets and all that stuff. So it's all in one frame, and it's pretty valuable.
I bet.
I suppose so. Nolan Ryan. I mean, talk about just incredible. I mean, Nolan Ryan's a Hall of Famer and arguably one of the best pitchers
Of all
ever.
time. Yeah.
I mean, of all time.
Yes. Love that. What a
Trying to
story.
Find my cords here. But the funnier part about it was I had Nolan about 2 weeks later, and the one thing that was happening to him at that time was it was taking him longer to heal between starts. If he went every 5th day, he struggled, until maybe the next one. And I drew him in Kansas City, and not long after that, and he threw 122 pitches in 5 innings. And it was just he just didn't have it. He was at the end of his career, but he could still bring it, and he was a fierce competitor. It was we could always tell. You could see if somebody was digging in on him, and we'd all go, "Oh God, here we go." He's going to drill him.
Yeah, right.
Getting around it. He's going to eat one, and he always got him in here. He never got it up around the head or any dangerous spot. He would just stick it in their ribs, and that was like the Robin Ventura time that Robin went to the mound, and that turned out to be a big mistake. Right, trying to pick a fight with somebody he thought was an old man, and Nolan was after that no hitter. The media was wanting to do their thing, and he said, "Well, tell him I'll be 45 minutes," because he goes in, and he jumps on the bike for 45 minutes after throwing a no hitter.
Wow.
His thighs were like tree trunks, and he was just those guys, Seaver, Nolan Ryan, to name 2, they used their legs. I mean, they pushed off, and that's why they never had arm problems, because they used their lower body to get their power. And Nolan always talked about the today's pitching and this, that, and he would always say, well, there's just too many pitchers out there that don't have command of their fastball. They can't throw it where they want when they want. And Gene Mauch always said, command is being able to throw a ball when you want to throw a ball. If you can do that, you've got control. That's Maddox like. That's But that was that day. And then funny, a couple years later, I'm working third for Kenny Rogers' perfect game at the new ballpark, not the current ballpark, but the one in between. And I had third base, and we had a kid named Eddie Bean was umpiring home plate. Eddie was a AAA guy filling in, and he ended up with about 400 games at the major league level, but he never got hired full time. Eddie was a good umpire. And sometimes it's an intangible as to who gets a job and who doesn't, because there's only so many spots. And I know I see a couple guys nodding their heads because what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have third base, so I'm just taking it all in. This is great. I got the rocking chair, man. I'm over there just watching the game, and we get late. It's perfect game going, and Gary DiSarcina was up for the Angels, and he hooks one down right at third base. It's a bag bender, and the ball was foul, but I could have called it fair and probably gotten away with it. That's how close it was. But
wow.
you guys know as we speak, you call what you see. You don't think about consequence. You can't. Once you start doing that,
Be a decider, right?
You'll never leave the locker room. It just call what you see, and it was foul. Well, Dean Palmer dives full tilt, gets it, heaves it across the infield from his knees. The runner's going, and I got my arms up. I'm calling the foul. Nobody can hear me because the crowd is screaming. Dankinger, Will Clark scoops it. He snow cones it with the glove. He's showing it. Dankinger's calling him out. By this time, I'm at the pitcher's mound going, the ball was foul. All right. And then the whole place goes quiet, and I'm standing in the middle of the field, third base umpire. And I'm walking back. I'm going, and everybody kind of looked at me like, you could have called it fair, Tim. Yeah, no shit. And so I'm walking back across it. I'm thinking, here it comes, man. Here it comes. He's gonna break his bat and flare one, like I said earlier. It's gonna be some fluke bloop hit. And I'm going to be the lead on SportsCenter today. They're going to show this. And this was before they had all the real sophisticated angles that they have nowadays. This was back in 91. No, this was 93, I think, 93 or 94. And so the game ended, and I tried to catch Eddie to just stay on the field for a little bit. Just come over here in the pit and just watch the whole situation. You're never going to see another one of these as long as you live or be a part of it. But I didn't get over there, and it was quite a long hike to get to our dressing room from the third base dugout where we entered. And I finally get up there, and he's got an empty bottle of beer on the table next to his locker, and he's firing down another one like this, And I'm going, where'd you go, man? I was stay down there and, join in the festivities. And he goes, screw that. They take it way too seriously up here. He had 3 beers fired in him before I had my shoes off. You're just missing out, Eddie. But so I was there for that one, and I was at second base. Scott Erickson threw a no-hitter at the Metrodome, and I had Carlos Zambrano's no-hitter as well. And that one was a little bit different because it was Houston. It was Houston versus the Cubs, and they played it in Milwaukee because the hurricane had hit Houston, and they were underwater, and people couldn't get to the ballpark. Well, Cecil Cooper, the commissioner ordered Houston to go play at Milwaukee because the Brewers were on the road. And the Astros did not want to go. They wanted to go home, be with their families, Cecil Cooper was the manager, and he and Bud were buddies because Coop played for the Brewers for years, and he was not happy. So they reluctantly came to play, and Zambrano had just come off the DL, and Cecil literally just sat in the corner of the dugout like this the whole game. He and his players pretty much followed suit. They just showed up barely. And he just blew their doors off. I mean, he was coming in at 98 back when 98 was 98. Nobody else was throwing that hard, and he blew him out of there. And the next day, Ted Lilly for the Cubs took a no hitter into the 8th inning. They almost didn't have a hit for 18 innings.
Wow.
And they got no hit, and then they got 2 hit back to back days.
Wow.
But it's something, I mean, you're fortunate to be a part of something like that and to see the everything that goes with it, all the excitement and that's when you realize I made the right career choice.
No.
This is fun.
No, Tim, you didn't just fall into the major leagues. How did you get started? What was your journey like to get there? Like I know a lot of the minors and the umpire, that's a tough living. I don't know what it was back then, but I've talked to a few that are going through it now, and they have a tough go.
Well, baseball, and you can answer this question for me because I'm not sure the answer, but I see a lot of times these Facebook posts where a guy retires after 20 years in the ECHL or something like that. See, in baseball, there's no such thing as a career minor league umpire. Right. You either work your way up and get there, or you're done. They will release you if they decide they're not interested in you. You're done in professional baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody can go to umpire school. All you need is a high school diploma and about $5,000. It's a 6-week course. Very intense, kind of like basic training in the military. I taught at umpire school for many years, and spend the first 4 weeks trying to build the students up and try to teach them stuff and angles and positioning and all those kinds of things, and then you spend the last 10 days trying to break them down because to see if they can do what you've taught them while somebody's yelling at them and screaming at them, and that's the test. And I started young. I started umpiring when I was like 14 years old. My baseball coach reluctantly talked me into umpire. I was reluctant to go umpire a girls' softball game because the guy hadn't showed up, and the Catholic Athletic Association would pay me $4 to do it, and I really
Catholic
didn't want to.
guilt. That's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
$4.
$4, baby. But my allowance was 5 from my parents, so that put me up to $9 for the week.
You got to dig in that
was
dish
pretty-
on Sunday.
Right. So I did it, and it turns out that they needed an umpire every Thursday at that time, and they just used me. And you guys know, officiating it's a fight or flight experience. People either get bit by the bug or they run. They don't want anything to do with it. You know how many times? You know, baseball especially, because when people would meet me for the first time and find out I'm an umpire, someone would just go, "Oh God, I had to do that one time. My kid's game, and the guy didn't show up." And of course, the first time you umpire, you're typically working people
Right.
They're yelling at you. They're yelling at you.
Oh yeah.
You're doing them a favor by being out there, and they're yelling at you.
Right.
And there's a challenge that it presents that is probably unlike any other. To be good at it, it takes an incredible skill set. And I always looked a little older than I was, so
helped.
I had a couple of assignment secretaries around here that had a lot of faith in me, and they assigned me to high school varsity games when I was 16. Now, I could have played varsity baseball at my high school, but never a day beyond that. I was not. I was a very average player, but I did know the game because I was well coached in the game growing up. I grew up in a neighborhood that produced Jack Morris, Dave Winfield, Paul Molitor, and Joe Mauer, and we all played for the same coaches growing up. That's
No
four Hall
kidding.
of Famers from the same neighborhood. That's
That's good coaching.
yeah, and everybody coached the same way. Didn't matter what rec center or what Catholic school or wherever you were, they all taught the same way. You took infield this way. This is how you took batting practice. This is how you line up the cutoff man, all the little things, hitting behind the runner, everything that matters in baseball. Baseball is a game of little things. And those who can do the little things will always be successful. And I just got the umpiring thing. And then, of course, when we had a couple guys here that had umpired in the minor leagues for a couple years and gave it up. They didn't like the travel and the lack of money, and they came back and they umpired high school, varsity, and college and everything else. And they weren't bitter, They
Right.
loved it, and they loved having a guy like me who was young and asked questions and wanted to get better at it. And they would take me anywhere and share everything they knew. And so that was a real blessing. And then I actually umpired. Now this was back. Okay, I'll say I did. I worked in the Big Ten when I was 18 years old, but the Big Ten at that time, we were just local homers. It wasn't organized the way it is now. The Big Ten umpires, they travel now, and they're making. I did a Big Ten doubleheader, which means I'm from Minnesota, and they kind of expect you to be their umpire, which I wasn't. I was too stupid to know any better. But I did it my first ever doubleheader, and it was $50, for 2 games at the Big Ten level. $50. I would have gotten more if I'd have worked a high school doubleheader. See, they knew that because everybody wanted to work the best there was, and we didn't care how much it paid.
Right.
And we had no way to negotiate it. So I did that. In fact, I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school, and after the doubleheader, I had to rush home, take a quick shower, and make it to my prom that night, Saturday night, and this was the 1970s, so I had a bow tie about that big, and a yellow tuxedo with white shoes, and a white belt. And no,
That's
I don't
cool.
have any pictures of it. I'm still looking. I gotta have it somewhere. I know I do. But yeah, that was when lime green and yellow and all these funky colors, powder blue. I mean, it was just the ugliest clothing you could possibly imagine. And And then I went to college, and I'd worked summertime. I worked American Legion ball, a lot of it. I worked a Babe Ruth World Series, and I was young. I mean, I was 20 years old. So I was halfway through college at the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul,
Yep.
and they have it's a semester school, and they have a January term. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yep.
Okay, so JT is in your 4 years there. You have to take two. You can have the time off if you choose, but in 4 years you got to take two of them. And they had short courses at the school that you could take. You could get an internship somewhere, anything that was educational. I decided to go to umpire school. Number one, I got to go to Florida during the month of January. Number two, I was getting college credit for it. And number three, I thought I would just hone my skills and become a better local umpire, you know. And it turns out that I finished first in the class. And now I had to make a decision. They offered me a chance to go to spring training in Arizona. I had 2 days to decide it. And, I called my dad and said, I'm not coming home. I'm gonna go. I'm driving to Scottsdale because I had my car with me. And he goes, as long as you promise to finish your education. So I went there and I worked the Oakland A's minor league camp, and I was slated to go to rookie ball in the Pioneer League, which starts, and back then the draft was in right after the College World Series, and I was slated to go to the Pioneer League, which started in the middle of June, and that was rookie ball. Everybody that played there was a rookie; they were fresh draftees, and we had so I was going to finish up spring training and then go home for 2.5 months and probably work some college ball and stuff until it was time to leave. And there was 2 days left in camp, and a guy who'd been assigned to the California League Long A, which is a 140 game season, he decided he didn't want to do it. He quit during spring training and went home. And the boss, Dick Nelson, was one of the supervisors for umpire development. He called me and he said, "Here's the deal. I got Danny Coffeen just told me he's not going to come back, and that leaves me with an opening in the California League." And he goes, "And I think you can do it." That didn't happen in those days. The California League was probably the best Class A league in the country. A lot of players went from the Cal League right to the big leagues, and the teams would have their better players out there because the weather was good. They never had to play in cold weather. Nobody was going to get hurt with that kind of stuff. They had nice ballparks, and he said, "I know you haven't been home since January 1st," and I was 20 years old. I wasn't even 21 yet. And but I'm going to need to have an answer from you by 6 o'clock tonight. And this was like at 2 in the afternoon.
Wow.
So my camp chief was a AAA umpire named Danny Powers, and Danny comes down to my room and knocks on the door, and he says, "Can I come in?" I said, "Sure." He comes in, he shuts the door, and he puts the chain up and double bolts it, and he says, "You're not going to leave this room until you call Dick Nelson back and you tell him you're taking that job." He said, "You have no idea what kind of an opportunity this is." He said, "You are talking about jumping 30 guys versus maybe never getting out of A ball." I didn't realize that. I just didn't realize it. And he said, "It's the Cal League's a good league to work." He says, "I think you got the moxie. You'll be able to survive." He said, "Your biggest challenge is going to be getting to know the managers because you don't know anybody, you know." Um, and it turns out that my partner, who was in the league the year before, he really wasn't very good. Only I didn't know that. I mean, I believe everybody I work with is good and wants to be good, and he kind of liked the life more than he liked the job,
Yep.
and so I'm running everybody. I think by June 1st I had like 10 ejections, and looking back on it, probably 7 or 8 of them were his. But I wasn't going to let him yell at him. That's just, you don't do that. I know that. The last thing I had to learn was what to tolerate and what not to tolerate. I knew that. And then so it's about June 1st, and I'm kind of down. And we lived in an apartment complex. There was 10 umpires and two-man crews, and we lived in this apartment complex because we could commute 3/4 of the city's from Modesto, California, and we would all go to work our games and come back at night. So there was a lot of camaraderie, and it was really fun. And there was a guy who was umpiring at the time as well. I wasn't working with him. His name's Bill Spooner, and Bill was a little bit older than I was 20 and Billy was about 24, 25. And we got to be really good friends. And he just one day said to me, he said, "You know, we've been following your crew a lot everywhere we go." And he goes, "They like you." So the players and the managers, they like you. They can't stand your partner. They can't stand him. He says they don't like his work. They don't like his personality. They don't like anything about him. So Bill says, "My advice to you is you just work your games. Take care of your stuff." And he said, "Unless they're burning the building down, let him handle his own stuff, and you'll be better off." So it worked. You know, I was much more comfortable and much more relaxed, and Dick Nelson came in and and said, "Look, you're going to be back in this league next year to start for sure. I'm not going to take you to instructional league because I want you to just go home. Just go home. You did a great job. I don't want to overwork you. Go home, get a part-time job, and do what everybody else does." So I go back the next year in the Cal League, and then there was some movement. A bunch of guys. I was the probably the fifth man of a 10-man staff, and promotions came, and Gary Darling and Bill Spooner and Tommy Sayed, these guys, they were all ahead of me. They got promoted like June 1st when the vacation started. So now I've got a new partner. He comes in, it's Dale Scott. Now my partner up until that point, we were cruising. I mean, I don't think we had an ejection by like June 1st. And Dale comes in. Now Dale and I had gone to umpire school together. We went to advanced school together. He had worked in the Northwest League, and now he and I are partners. And we ran everybody. Again, all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. And we'd come back at night, and everybody would say, "How was your game? How was this? And how was that?" And guys, "Oh, not a word. Nobody said anything. Not a peep here. How about you?" "Well, I ran Maloney in the third inning, and I got bumped by Smith in the fifth, and then this guy threw a ball at me from the dugout, and he just all night long. All I did was write reports, and Dale same thing. And the league president hated ejections. He always felt if you had to eject somebody that you screwed up the situation. That was your fault. And I'll guarantee you, every ejection I ever had, the guy deserved to go. And I never ever ran somebody. I had one ejection in my career where I didn't warn the guy, and we'll come back to that later. But anyway, the league president hates Dale and myself. Only the managers liked us. And Dale's a very, very good umpire. And it's late in the year, and we've got like 10 days to go. And the league president lets us know that we are the two worst umpires he's ever seen in his life, and you will not be working in this league next year. As if to say, you're fired in 10 days. You're done. And we both drove that day, and I was driving back from San Jose to Modesto, and I got tears in my eyes, and I hate the world, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go back to St. Thomas and get my degree, and the hell with this. I don't need this. This is stupid. And the next day, Dale and I are working in a little town called Rohnert Park, which is north of San Francisco, not far from Napa. And we worked a game that night, and now we got like 9 games to go, and we're counting it down. Can't wait for this to end. And we get in the locker room after the game, and Dick Nelson was there. He'd been watching us for 2 days. We didn't know he was in town. And he goes, "I just want to tell you both. Number one, I know the league president hates you." He says, "Don't give it a thought. Don't even bat an eye at it." He says, "Because you're both going to go to instructional league with me, and you're both going to Double A next year. So don't burn any bridges. Don't flip anybody off. Don't do anything stupid." He said, "Just go home." And the next day, the Twins and A's, who were going to play in the playoffs, were playing each other, and we had the series. And when the managers found out that he and I were not working the playoffs, their organizations filed grievances. And I had to tell them, no, 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 don't. We don't want to work. We're going home. I'm done with this league. I don't have to come back. I got nothing to prove. Right? So then I went and I did instructional league, and the next year I went to the Southern League, and now I've got to go clear across the country and find a whole bunch of new managers again that I've never worked. And that year, the Southern League was the first Double A league to go to 3 men. And but basically, what it did was it kept some guys around that probably would have got released, but they needed
Oh,
experience. So I was literally the 15th man on a 15-man staff as far as my resume went. And an opening came in the American Association. Steve Palermo was working in Dave Brighetti's no hitter on July 3rd of 1983, and he ran over to the dugout to cover a pop up, and he stepped on a bat in the on deck circle, and he twisted his knee, so he needed surgery. Tim Welke got called up from the American Association for the rest of the year, and that left an opening in the American Association AAA. And the president of that league knew the importance of having. He told the umpire development program, they said, I want a major league prospect." And they said, "Well, the only prospect we have right now is barely 23 years old, and he's only got 2 months in Double A." And he said, "I'll take him."
Wow.
So another phenomenal opportunity. You can't write a better script than that. So not only is that, then I go join a crew in Oklahoma City, and my chief was late in his career. He's about 37. And he'd been around a long time, and the American League had taken him to spring training for the first time that year. And this was make or break time for him. They were either going to say yes to him or say no thanks. Well, I have the plate the night that the American League supervisor comes in to watch him, only he sees me. And he comes in the locker room and introduces himself, and he says, "How old are you?" And he says, "I'm 38." He says, "How old are you?" He says, I'm 29. He goes, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 23." And he goes, "You're 23 years old and you're working?" "Yes, sir." He goes, "You're going to make $100,000 a year someday." And I'm like, "Oh, great." That's just what these guys want to hear.
Great.
I mean, yeah,
yeah,
that
right.
that is, you know. So that was the beginning of, and I never, I, I was one of those guys that everybody else knew that I was going to go to the big leagues except me. I
Yeah.
never believed it. I didn't think that way. John McSherry taught me at umpire school the first day. He says, "The only thing you can ever do is go on the field every night and try to be the best umpire in your league. Because whenever the opening comes, they're going to take who's ever doing the best job. You never know when that's going to happen, and you never know, how to, that's what you got to do." And I kept it simple, and it did. And then that winter, I went to the Dominican Republic, and then I kind of figured out, wow, I guess I'm going. And I got hired. Dale Scott kind of did the same as me. Dale and I ended up getting hired by the American League on the same day,
Awesome.
and we worked together 3 different times. He joined me in AAA. We worked at Arizona Instructional League. We worked the Dominican and the California League together. And I've told people this all the time: is it's a team. When you go out there as officials, you're a team. And you got to do everything you can to make your partner as good as he possibly can be. And he has to be doing the same thing for you. And if that's not happening, you're both going to sink.
Yep.
You can't just worry about yourself. And it's been a common theme throughout the history of hiring umpires that umpire these 3 big league guys, they work together in the minor leagues because they help one another. They came in to see one guy and they ended up seeing 2 more that they liked because they worked as a team. And the guys that were in it for themselves, they never made it. They didn't make it. They had all the priorities were just misplaced. So it was quick, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of guys that they would bust my chops for years. Did you see every town in the Southern League? Did you make it to every city? Yeah, I did. I did. I got to everyone once.
Oh, I mean, we see that in hockey all the time,
Oh yeah,
especially with these young kids. Like
yeah,
you find these young kids, you wrap a bow around them, and you promote them quickly because you know they can handle it. I actually just got off the phone with one of them.
yeah.
Actually a goalie. He's a
Hmm.
high school goalie, and he's one of the better skaters I've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
And I'm going to throw everything at him that he can handle, and then he'll do it. And I told him you get the sport, and you put him with a veteran guy, and you work him that way. I mean,
exactly.
very similar.
Yeah, and it's all you can teach positioning and angles and all those little things that they're just going to learn, but it's the guy that can handle people under pressure is the guy that's going to be successful when it all shakes out. And the hardest part about it is not everybody's going to make it, and everybody's good enough.
Right.
It just is. It's a right place, right time, kind of thing. And I always tell people, they say, "How did you get there so fast?" And I say, "You know what? Every time somebody was in town scouting, I had a situation and I got it right. I didn't get them all right, but when somebody was there and I didn't know they were there,
Right.
I got it. And they're up there. They're not pencil whipping me. They're green lighting me, and that's like McSherry said. You
Timing,
got to
right?
try to be as good as you can be.
I had a supervisor that said, if you can manage the people, you can manage the game. Like
Exactly.
it's a lot of truth in that.
And yourself. If
Yeah.
you can manage yourself too. But I always
That's
like the
important.
hockey part when the guys can F off a player and nobody gets penalized for it or anything like that. I go, I miss
That's an
that.
art. Yeah, that's an art though. Like you
Yeah.
gotta know who to say, tell the fuck off and who
Right.
not to, right? Especially even coaches too. Same thing.
Yeah, and they're softer. As
Yep.
time goes on, they're softer and
Sensitive, right?
so and you just what they say about change is inevitable, but growth is optional. If you're gonna stay the red ass, like that, it's probably the game's probably gonna pass you by.
Yeah.
You're gonna
I
have
like
to.
that.
You're gonna have to schmooze just a little bit more. Doesn't mean you're an ass patter out there and telling everybody how great they are. But sometimes the best thing to say in an argument is nothing.
Right. And
You
I
know,
love your points with the coaches too. Anytime I worked the East Coast League, which is like basically double A, and then I
I
worked
used to go.
triple A.
I
So yeah.
when I worked spring training in Fort Myers, I would always go to those games.
Oh
I
yeah, those
loved
games are
going.
great. Yeah.
That
A
little,
lot
I
of
love
fun.
that arena. I loved going to those games.
Oh, it's an
And I'd
awesome
usually go
arena.
down and talk to the guys, between
Oh, that's
periods.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I got to ask because the communication piece is so huge. When umpires and the managers are, nose to nose, what's being said? Like,
Well, sometimes it's real and sometimes it's not.
okay.
It's what's the best way to put it? If back in the old days when the guys would go absolutely berserk, and I'm not even going to name names. You guys I'll tell you the eras and you can fill in the blanks. But it was basically during the '80s and up until the maybe '90s. Whenever a manager went berserk, chances are alcohol was involved,
Mm.
either from a day game on Saturday following a night game on Friday, which may or may not have had a visit to bed,
Oh, interesting.
or some were not strangers to if that styrofoam cup didn't have steam coming out of it, and that was your first clue that. And if they had a towel wrapped around their neck, that was always a clue. And players, when players go nuts, usually it's something off the field. It's something is wrong in their personal life.
Mm.
And, because no one can get that angry over a called strike. Okay, you're going to bat again in about another 25 minutes. I didn't just end your life. Okay.
Right.
And so when it's a player, it's like, okay, one of the classics was, say, George Brett when he got called out for the pine tar bat. Okay, he wasn't mad at McClellan. He was mad at Billy Martin. And he came running out there to Tim, said, "Don't you let that no good, he's talked you into it," that kind of thing. But it wasn't about Tim. It was about Billy. He hated Bill because Billy was a bench jockey from way back. He would yell at the other team's pitcher, "Oh, you puss!" Throw him something he can hit. Just he was old school like that. Weaver not so much, but Earl was. He
Special.
would. We probably would have had a little trouble with the breathalyzer a few times in some of those games, but and then there's ones where you've got a tough call, and the guy might even think you're right, but he says, "I got to be out here in this one." He goes, I can't go back to the dugout." my team is he says I got to go. And I go, okay, so you want to go big? You want to go small? What do you want to do? He said, you want to dance a little bit? And I'll just move a little bit while we're talking, so it looks like it's a little bit more heated than it actually is. But it's not an act. More often than not, it's a legitimate complaint. And people ask this question all the time: Who's the worst manager ever? And I will say the guy that's lost 10 straight, whoever he is, because they're on the hot seat, they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling it. And, and I would tell my crew, I would pay attention to what we were walking into. And some
That's
of my guys would say, why do you look at
game
that?
intelligence
I
right
said,
there.
hey, they've lost 9 straight, all right? You know, trust me, if we have something out there on the bases, you better expect him to be out there because he's laying for one. He wants one and he needs one. So, a little bit of, you know,
Homework.
plan
Yeah.
your work and work your plan kind of thing. Be ready for it. Don't be
Yeah,
surprised.
don't be surprised, right?
Right.
I tell guys that all the time. Like we
Yeah.
have a couple of coaches that are in the junior loop, or
Yeah.
even the college coaches that that are crazy, and
Yeah.
like they lose their mind. I'm like, well, you didn't expect that. Like
Yeah.
you should actually have 2 or 3 lines or comebacks and know it's coming,
Yeah.
when it's coming, and then get out in front of it. Like
Yeah. One of the lines, 2 of the lines I learned from Larry Barnett, which was when a guy was coming out and he was just being an idiot. He was just bobbing his head. You guys are hockey guys. I played hockey. And one time as a player, I wanted to fight this guy so bad and I dropped my gloves and he skated away.
the worst.
You ever want to feel like an idiot? You're standing out there with your gloves on the ice, and there's nothing worse than wanting to fight somebody that doesn't want to fight back.
Yep.
That's he just won. He just won, and I would do the same thing with. I heard this line and I used it ever since. Was when they come out and their head bobbing and kicking dirt and doing all that, and I would just say, "What are you trying to do here? Scare me?
Yeah, right.
What's your point?" And then now they're frustrated. Now they're frustrated because you won't fight them.
Right.
I'm not going to get all worked up over this. You can handle that yourself. Go ahead.
Right.
And you get the confidence to start doing that after you've been there a couple of years and you realize, that's the best way to disarm them is just don't engage them. And especially one line that I used to use in hockey, and I was a high school referee. Okay, high school in Minnesota was a 2
It's
referee.
huge. It's still
Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
it's great. I mean, yeah, those kids can play,
Yeah.
and and now in high school hockey in Minnesota, they're a 4-man system in high school now because it used to be, each team had a first line that could fly.
Yeah.
Second line was probably 65% of what the first line was, and then the third line was just a checking line to give the other 2 lines a break. Now they have 4 lines and they can all fly. You watch the Minnesota State high school hockey tournament on television, they're moving as fast as the NHL. It
They go
is
to a lot of
unbelievable.
D1 kids come out of there. A lot
Oh
of
yeah,
D1 kids come out of there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was great, but I would, when you're over there by the bench, you're kind of a sitting duck sometimes for getting in your ear, and I would always just say something like, I'm right here. I'm right here, John, and call him by his name. I'm right here, John, and I'm not hard of hearing. And that would usually it doesn't embarrass him, but it kind of knocks him down in front of his team. And
Yep.
you don't want to embarrass a guy in front of his
Never.
players. You don't want to do that unless he's being a real dick. And then I'll say, you don't knock it off. I will humiliate you in front of these guys so badly you'll wish you never saw me. And sometimes you got to do that.
Uh-huh.
They'll determine that. If that's your modus operandi, then you're a one-dimensional official and you're in the wrong field. But sometimes you got to pull that trigger. Sometimes they won't back down until you let them have it between the eyes, and maybe that's what they wanted. Because especially in professional sports now, next time you got nothing better to do, pull up the Red Sox like their website and go to like their administrative offices and check out how many vice presidents they have. There's like
Right.
2 pages worth. It used to be the American League Red Book. It would go to the Minnesota Twins site, right? And there'd be a picture of Carl Pohlad, the owner. And then it would say Carl Pohlad, owner, Terry Ryan, general manager, Tom Kelly, manager. That was it. And then there would be like 5 executives, and that's it. Now The manager, he's not even on the first page. He's the field manager. He's not the manager. He's the field manager. He doesn't pick the team. You know, it's so corporate now. I tried to find because I'm going to Chicago next weekend, and I tried to find because you get a lifetime pass from baseball after you work 20 years, so it's good at any ballpark for me and a guest.
That's awesome.
But some of the stadiums have it, you know, they like it if you let them know a day in advance you'll be coming or whatever. You don't want to just walk up and flash your badge. So I tried to get a hold of the ticket guy, and it took me 2 days of searching. There's like 16 vice presidents of ticket operations, and I'm going, all right, which way do I talk to? You know, and it was crazy. Fortunately, I picked one guy's name and I emailed him, and I got an email back from another guy who apparently answers the emails of this guy. That's what he does. Like, okay, whatever. I'm coming to the game. I just want to go to the game. Can I do that? Yeah, that was hilarious. So that's what's happened to the game.
Yes.
It's just
All
it's
corporate.
they're and now and the reason I went off on that tangent is, you know, managers now they got to answer to all these people.
Yep.
Because if you've got, you know, vice president number 15 that says he doesn't get ejected enough, he doesn't argue enough, you know, that kind of thing. If you get a quorum that starts feeling that way, your job's in jeopardy by 4 people that you don't even know.
Right.
You know, it's. I wouldn't want their job. I wouldn't want to be a manager nowadays because you just got
17.
too many
There's
people to answer
17
to.
vice presidents on the Red Sox.
No,
17 vice presidents. How's that? That up, boy.
That's
That's what a good production guy does, right there, right there. That's funny.
Josh is right on top.
He's the
of it.
best.
Beautiful. Well done, Josh. Well done.
Now, some of the you bring up the differences now from when you did a majority of your umpiring. One thing is replay,
Yep.
because that wasn't something that you had, and the other thing is this whole new letting the computers call the balls and strikes.
Right.
That's something that's kind of, it looks like it's coming sooner than later.
Yeah.
So first, replay. What's your thoughts on that? Because we ask everyone about that because replay is new to kind of every
All
sport.
sports.
Yeah.
I'm all in favor of it, of replay. In all the major sports today, and not just men's, but even you know, if ever there was a league out there now that could use replay, it's the WNBA. But these guys are so big and they are so fast.
Yes.
You know, you look at these NBA games and they get down to buzzer time and it's an out of bounds play and one player's hand is here and the other guy's hand is there and the ball goes out and who did it go off of? And there's just so many plays that are almost impossible to the human eye, you know, that I'm all in favor of that because nobody wants to get it right more than the officials. We don't want to be,
Right.
you know, and I'll come back to a situation I had in Boston. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, but as far as the replay of getting calls, I've always been an advocate of that. I like how their system works. They make it go fast. The the challenge system for balls and strikes is okay. They demonstrated it during the All-Star game. I don't know if you watched the All-Star game or not. I kind of did, only because Danny Iasonia had the plate, and I worked with Danny a lot. Danny worked his first game with me, so
Oh, that's awesome.
I was happy to see that. It was fun, and okay. First of all, it's a non-competitive game, so you know they've got him mic'd, and you know the guy would challenge the pitch. He goes, "Oh, you want to challenge it?" You know, so there was no argument. It was okay. So they look at Danny, and go, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, 2-2. All right, that's okay." But when they get down to competition, both teams get 2 challenges. That's it. Now, are they going to burn a challenge in the 3rd inning unless a pitch bounces and is called a strike in the 3rd or 4th inning? They're probably going to save them for the later point in the game. And this is the scenario I see. It's going to happen eventually. All right, so it's defensive teams up by 2, 9th inning, 2-2 count, runners on 2nd and 3rd. Next pitch comes in, the umpire says strike 3. game over. Catcher runs out toward the pitcher. They start shaking it, and the batter's going like this. Challenge it. Okay, challenge. Wait a minute. Hold the celebration. Run the challenge. Oops, sorry. Go back here. It's 3-2 now. Now the next pitch comes in, and they call ball 4. Now the defense challenges. Nope, sorry, change that. Strike 3. Game is over. I think it's kind of a buzzkill. I think the drama and the celebration is
Yes.
something it's going to happen. It's
Yep.
just a matter of time before it happens. Everything in this game, baseball that's the beauty of it is every night you watch the game long enough, every night you'll see something you've never seen before.
Yep. Hockey, same way.
Exactly, and you know, that's the part that scares me is the challenge system. Okay, you only get 2, so having to pick when you're going to use them is a strategy of its own.
Right.
And if it's designed to get everything right,
Why are we choosing? Right.
why are we picking what we're going to challenge and what we're not going to challenge?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not a cure all. It's and ever since the umpires have been, it came into vogue right near the end of my career when we started getting electronically evaluated on our plate games. And there's the umpire. Everybody's got a laptop. And after the game, you can log into the umpire website by 10 o'clock the next morning, and you'll know what you scored from your plate game last night. Most guys can tell you what they scored before they even log in. That's how good they are. They'll go, yeah, I remember that pitch, that pitch, that pitch. Yeah, the machine's going to get me on that one, that kind of thing. And as a staff, every night they operate over 97% accurate right now, which is anywhere between 2 to 5 pitches in a game. You really need to change anything? I mean, is that a problem? Is that
Right. I don't get that. Yeah.
I mean, it's not. It's just the same old. The people that are in charge today market themselves as they can fix anything.
Right.
They've never worn a jockstrap a day in their life, but they can fix anything.
Yep.
And so many times their solution is it serves to create 5 new problems that they did not anticipate. And so now you're chasing your ass because, okay, yeah, we took care of that, but now we got to deal with this and this and this and this. And it's
See it
never
all
going to
the
be
time.
perfect. It's just
Yeah.
not. So why bring it? And the biggest problem I have is, technology is, and you guys see it, it crashes every now and then.
Yes.
And when it does, you're helpless. You can't go manual, you know. And now baseball they can because you've got a guy back there. It's never going to replace an umpire. You're going to have umpires always. You're always going to have human beings. At least in my lifetime, I don't ever see that changing. But I just don't see this real need for it. I just don't. It's an imperfect game. All sports are imperfect, and if you could, replay is designed to be able to correct something that is clearly incorrect. And if you watch the NHL and when it first started, guys would deny it until I finally beat it into them. Say, I watch enough games, guys. And if that's the way it should be, when what is it? I said, well, if you watch a game now and a team is attacking and they get close to the blue line, if it's close to offside, they wave it. They don't call it, which is smart.
Yep.
A whistle kills everything. You can't take back a whistle.
Right.
But they let it go, and unless you're dead sure that the guy's offside, let the play go. Get a result, and then okay, they score. Okay, now are you going to challenge it? They're going to look at it and go, "We think he's offside." Okay, let's go. That's smart. That's like when I replay first came in when I was a crew chief at the end of my career, and we had what was called foul pole to foul pole. All we could use it for was home run calls, fair ball at the fence or a home run.
I remember that. Yeah.
It became necessary because they put monster seats in Fenway. They started putting spots in parks where you simply can't see. You can't tell what that hit. And I just told my crew, I said, look, if there's a ball hit in the outfield and it's at or near the top of the fence and it's your ball and you're out there on it, if that ball comes back on the field immediately, unless you're sure that it hit the fat guy in the orange shirt who's 5 rows up and came back on, if you're at or near the top, leave the ball in play.
Right.
Just leave it in play because let the guy run at full speed so we have a result rather than calling it a home run, which now everybody stops.
Right.
And then you replay it and you realize, no, the ball was in play. Now we got to place runners.
Let the fumble continue.
This
Right.
this guy's slow. This guy was running on the pitch. This guy was halfway, you're never going to please anybody now. So if you can get a result, get a result. And then it's always easier to bring something back than it is to kill it in the first place.
Agreed.
So I think it's good. I think replay is a good thing. I'm actually for expanded use. To be honest with you, I don't want to see it in the NHL. I don't want to see it used for calling penalties unless they're
No minors, like major.
yeah, a typical slashing call
Yeah.
or something ordinary. No,
Right.
because with 2 referees on the ice now, they don't miss too many. They
No.
really don't. The one thing I do love about the game, and I've got some friends, and I know you guys are hockey guys, but I've got some friends that whenever a fight breaks out, they'll always say, "See, that's what I don't like about watching hockey. I don't like doing that. You watch any other sport, and if they break into a fight like that, both players are ejected for the game and they're gone. These guys can go sit down for 5 minutes and come back and do it again." And I think someday that's going to happen. I think someday it's going to go away.
I think so too.
They did it in college hockey years ago. I mean, college used to be a thug league.
Yep.
I mean, those benches would empty back when Herb
Minnesota, North Dakota, forget it.
Oh my God! When Herb Brooks was coaching the Gophers, they had a guy named Billy Butters who went and took on the whole North Dakota bench one night.
Yep.
I mean, it was crazy. And funny, I happened to mention that I just played in the Herb Brooks Foundation charity golf tournament here about a week ago, and I saw Eruzione, and I went up to him and I said, "Captain, I just going to tell you, I'm pretty confident that you and I are the only 2 people here today that know where Winthrop, Massachusetts is." He said, "You're my man. Who are you?" I went,
That's awesome.
That was fun, yeah. And it was a great bunch of guys. See, because I played against most of those guys, the Minnesota guys like McClanahan and Broughton and those. They're the same age as I am.
Okay.
And we played against each other as bantams, because I was done playing by the time I was 16. But growing up with those guys and watching them in the Minnesota State tournament every year, and then playing for the Gophers, it made me, after the tournament, I went home and pulled out my disc of The Miracle. I had to watch it again just so I could cry some more.
Right. So what was that Fenway story you had for us?
Well, it was the '99 LCS against the Yankees.
I was there, yep.
I was working second base,
Okay.
and Jose Offerman was on first. And typically, when I worked second with the runner on first, I would set up on the first base side of second. So if you can envision this, home plate is here and the runner's there. And
Yep.
you take the steel play, you take it, okay, it turns you toward the base, because that way you can see the outside of the bag.
Yep. Sight lines, yeah.
Shoot, who was playing short? Well, Jeter was playing short, and I
Yep.
was on the third base side, and they were pitching this guy. He asked me if I could move, and sometimes Boggs used to do that all the time. He always, he would go up, and he always looked in that left of center field. If you were positioned there, he would always, and we'd move over because he just didn't want anything in his background. So I moved over to the third base side, which is not where I like to be, and he hit the slow hopper to Knobloch where everybody's converging in the baseline. Now that particular play right there, a slowly hit ball with a runner on first between first and second, is the play that everything can happen. First of all, the runner has to yield to the fielder. The fielder has the right of way to make a play on the ball, but he gets one shot at it. So he comes in and he botches it, and the ball gets past him. Now the runner runs into him. That's obstruction, because you had your plans to make so that's obstruction. he's going to at least get second. The other way is if the runner doesn't give him a chance and runs into him, that's interference, and you can award a double play on that. The other one is going out of the baseline. Now, going out of the baseline has always created a lot of confusion because the violation for going out of the baseline is you went out of the runner creates his own baseline. You've probably heard that 1,000 times. What does that mean? It means that you can go any way you want to between first and second, but once a fielder has the ball and he attempts to tag you, if you go 3 feet either side of a line between you and the base you're going to, and you go beyond that, you're on the baseline, and that's a judgment call. We don't have a tape measure,
Right.
but basically, what's 3 feet? Well, 3 feet is essentially a step and a reach. And if you're here and then you go around him because you know he's going to tag you, if he steps and reaches and he can't get you, you're out of the baseline. So you got to watch for all those things, and they can all happen on that play. And I kept telling myself, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I said, just relax, let it happen, let it happen. Okay, okay, okay. And Knobloch just goes forward with the glove. From my angle, he tagged him.
My
From
angle.
my
I love
angle,
that.
from my angle, he tagged him. And we didn't have replay. And I could see out of the corner of my eye because Fenway, the dugouts are much further down toward first and third base than in other ballparks. They're closer to home plate. And the whole Red Sox dugout, I saw the arms go up. And that's when I kind of knew that shit, they got a pretty good look over there, and they're all saying the same thing.
That's the worst. Yeah.
And now we did as a crew before that. We didn't have and getting together on calls wasn't really in vogue in those days. However, we as a crew said before that, hey,
Get it right.
wherever the fucking ball is, I want 6 sets of eyes on the ball. I don't be telling me you were watching somebody touch a base or something else. Everybody it's going to happen where the ball is, and if we got to get
Love that.
together, and if you got something different than what the calling umpire has, I don't want to find out about it in the locker room after the game. I
Right.
want to know on the field. If
Team.
there's something there, and you got something, and you want to talk about it, just put your hands together like that, and we'll huddle up. I don't care what they say. Well, it turns out that Jimmy Williams came out, and Jimmy and I had a great relationship. And he goes, Timmy, why is he out? And I went, Jimmy, I got him out on the tag. And he goes, oh, he didn't tag him, Tim. He missed them big time. And I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to try to sell him on something. I said what I usually say in arguments is, I called what I saw, Skip. I called what I saw. And he looked around and he goes, God, is there anybody you can go to for help on that? And I went, if there was, he'd already be here. And he was a
Left
pro.
it hang.
He was a pro about it. I felt like shit, of course, because now I know I missed it. Just
Right.
You can tell by the way a guy's arguing when he really wants something or when he knows he's right. You can tell.
Oh yeah.
And after the game, we got in, and everybody. The only guy that didn't say anything was Al Clark, and Al was the plate umpire. He probably had the best angle that he could see the gap between the fielder and the runner from home plate. Well, how many times are we going to have the home plate umpire call tag plays between first and second? We got 6 guys out there. But every other umpire, if you look, the right field umpire, first base umpire, second base umpire, third base umpire, left field, we all had the same angle. Everybody got in and said, Tim, I swear to God, he tagged him. I thought he got him. I said, well, that's what I thought too. But, so I went into I had a good relationship with the press because I didn't run from them, and I went into the room and I always tell people that was we would always say that before a playoff series. We'd say, let's try to stay out of the room. We don't want to go in the room tonight. All right, let's try to stay out of the room because the lights in that room, they're really bright. But I knew Bob Ryan and Peter Gammons really well, Shaughnessy, all those guys, and Bob just said, have you had a chance to see the replay? And I said yes, and he goes, well, what do you think? And I said, I think it was clearly an incorrect decision, Bob. And the pencils dropped. They were done. They couldn't say anything. They couldn't. I told the
Right.
truth. I just told the truth, and I actually got praised for it. I got more
Right.
credit for telling the truth than I didn't try to buffalo anybody and sell anybody on anything that wasn't there. And uh, I mean, the commissioner called me and said you represented our game very well tonight, and Jimmy was really good because Rick Reed had a close play that went against him the first night. Basically, the Sox. It was the first time the Sox and Yankees ever played in LCS.
Mm.
Was not that year, and it was not a real good series. The Yankees really played better than they did. We didn't lose it for them, but we sure as hell didn't help them. And and that's what Nomar said. He said the umpires didn't cost us this. We didn't play well enough to win. And Jimmy came right out and said, "I'll take Tim Tschida and Rick Reed on my games 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. They did not cost us the game. They didn't cost us this series. We just
Well,
didn't
one
we
call's
didn't."
not going to do it. Right.
Yeah, and so I mean there is comfort in that, but that was the time in my career where I really became an advocate of replay. I mean,
Mm.
we could have, they wouldn't have even known my name. And
Right.
it's funny because
Good
uh,
point.
when Mark called me to talk about coming on the show, uh, Chris Rooney we've been friends since shortly after that because we had a union meeting, arbitration, and I had to go to it. And it was in Philadelphia and stayed at the Marriott Airport there. And my flight back to Minneapolis was like a 4 o'clock something, and there was fog in Minneapolis. They canceled everything, so I had to get a room. So I'm checking in at the desk, and this guy comes up to me. I tell Rooney, I says, "You look like a Kennedy. You look like you're a little too pretty for me." And, and so he walks up, and he goes, "Excuse me, Tim?" And I went, "Yes." And he goes, "How do you do? I'm Chris Rooney with the National Hockey League." I went, "Oh, hi, how you doing, man?" And believe it or not, back in those days, I was pretty good friends with Andy Van Helmen.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, Andy was. I got him World Series tickets in '96 when I worked, and after that, um, he and Marty Springston. Marty was our boss, and Marty umpired with Bob Stewart. Bob Stewart was an American
Oh.
League umpire. Paul
Yep.
Stewart,
Paul
his son,
Stewart's. Yep.
his son
Yes.
was an NHL referee. And
Yes. Yep.
Springstead was a New York guy, and he loved hockey. So he got to know Andy, and then Marty and I were very close. So I got to know Andy. And then so if we had uh, an overlap, either in the spring or fall, where both hockey and baseball were going on, if we had a Saturday day game and there was a hockey game that night, I would just call Andy and say, he'd get us press passes, and we'd go. My crew would always say, "Is there anybody you don't know?" I said, what? It pays to be nice to people. So anyway, Rune's he says, "You what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I got my flights canceled. I gotta just check into the hotel here." He goes, "Do you want to go to the game tonight?" I went, "Yeah, all right, the Flyers are home." Now he was actually up and down that year. I don't think he was on the staff. Um, or no, he might have been in town to work in Philly like 2 days later, something like that, whatever. But he was young. It was his first year. Yeah, I said, "What time you gather up?" He goes, "Well, we'll be in the lobby in about 45 minutes." I said, "I just got to dump my stuff. I'll be right back. I won't make you wait." So it was really cool. I went to the game, and the minute before I went up, I said, I got to ask you, how'd you recognize me?" He goes, "I'm from Boston." That was the winter right after the call, the big
Oh,
call.
that's awesome.
But then every time I went to Boston ever since, we would always hook up, and then uh, I usually hook up with him at least 2-3 times a year when he comes here now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's still he and Macaulay are
He's the
just
best in the
still
business.
they're the faces
Absolutely.
of the league along with Sutherland, you
Yep.
know. Uh, and I knew a lot of the other guys too, Danny O'Halloran and
Oh yeah.
uh,
All studs. Right?
yeah, there was just a bunch, and they all kind of retired at the same time. And it's ruins. I keep telling you keep getting assigned to Game 7 of the finals, and it never goes 7.
Yeah.
You're You're the good luck charm. Everybody
the,
wants to work with you because they don't have to work.
the year Chicago lost to Boston, he had Game 7, and
Yeah.
was it whatever? He had that next game, and
Yeah.
the Chicago Blackhawks won it at home. He got us the tickets. My
Nice.
family. My father got him started refereeing way back when. We're obviously from Celtic,
Yeah.
and so he's awesome. He's the best.
Good
Yeah,
guy.
like
Good
I
guy.
told you, Tim, him and I lived in Des Moines, Iowa,
Yeah.
refereeing the USHL and the Central League.
Right.
And we were in an apartment in Des Moines. And the next year is when he got hired by the NHL, and I went to the East Coast League with Andy Van Hellemond.
Uh-huh.
So the world is very small, as
Wow,
we all
crazy.
know.
Yes, it is. And then, did you guys ever cross paths with a guy named Bill Robertson who took over the USHL or USA Hockey? What did he do? This was later. You guys were probably done by then.
No, when I was in the USHL, it was Scott Brand. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill was a high school classmate of mine, and he did everything, man. He was the media relations director for the Timberwolves and then the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, and then he did both. He was the Angels and the Ducks. Big job. He worked in every major sport. Then he went to the NHL when the Wild came to Minnesota. And he did that for 10 years. And then the team was sold and they kind of eliminated his job. And he became the commissioner of the WCHA,
Oh yeah.
okay, Western Collegiate Hockey Association,
Yep.
before the Big Ten came. No, or was after.
That's how I know the name. Yeah.
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 And Bill was not a hockey guy. He was a basketball, baseball guy, but he had just great skills. And he ended up, he needed a job for about 3 more years, and he took that job. And it was like, he goes, man, this place has been operating on a shoestring. He goes, I have to issue memos as to how many towels have to be in the locker room for a visiting team and how many bars of soap. He said it's an absolute shit show. And then he got the job with, I don't remember if it was USA Hockey or if it was the USHL. I can't remember. I got to run to the ref. I'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Take 5.
I like that. I'm gonna go too.
So as of today, when we're taping this, it was announced that Jen Powell will be the first woman to umpire in Major League Baseball. And when it comes to it, MLB, NHL, they're really the last two on this front. On this woman official front. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that and that the progression of the game and that kind of the groundbreaking of her doing a game.
Absolutely. Yeah, I posted it on Facebook or on my timeline or whatever you call those things. Congratulations and everything. Yeah, in fact, I said, the NBA and the NFL are already there. She broke the glass ceiling in baseball, and I said, NHL, you're next. And it's going to happen, and it's not because it has to happen. It's not because it should happen. It's never ever been a gender issue. It's a skill set issue.
Right.
And you either have the skill set or you don't. Now, baseball, unlike the others, for many, many years, never went out and recruited people. It was you chased it. You went to umpire school. Anybody could go. Any woman could go. They couldn't keep you out of there. Are there women who could umpire Major League Baseball? Countless numbers on all sports. But the ones with the skill set, that skill set, are probably doing something bigger and better and greater. Not to say that this is an underachievement by any means, but finally, they found someone who's got this. No one should ever be hired for quotas or whatever you want. Any of that kind of thing. If she's performing the best, and I believe she must be because I know who's in charge and who's doing the recruiting, then she deserves it, and I'm happy for her. I think it's great. I think it's great. It's going to happen in hockey, and I'm, like we're all hockey guys, right? When girls hockey first came into vogue, I thought there's no way. There's no way. Where are they going to get the players? They're all female athletes are playing volleyball, basketball, and softball. And where are they? Well, it turns out in Minnesota, what they were, they were the daughters of coaches. They grew up just being rink rats. And like Natalie Darwitz. Okay, Natalie Darwitz grew up right here in my neighborhood. I played hockey against her dad growing up, right? And she just went wherever dad went when he was coaching, and he told her when she was a kid, Natalie, they can't hit you if they can't catch you. And she could just flat out fly, and she just went into the Hall of Fame. This the Toronto Hockey Hall of Fame. There's two young women from Minnesota that went in this year, and I would have never believed that in 1,000 years that girls hockey would become women's hockey, I should say now, would become what it is. I was a and I wasn't. It wasn't because I wasn't in favor of it. I just didn't believe it would occur. I didn't think they would ever have the numbers. But I see more and more women officiating it. I go to a high school game now, and I see,
A ton.
there's more avenues. There's more avenues for women to get there, and as it should be, because originally, when women's college sports came into being, that was kind of what that was provided was kind of another 10 years of officiating for old officials. They could go out because the pace of play had slowed just like they had slowed. They couldn't keep up with the high school kids anymore, but they could go work that because they had three guys. But this is momentous. This is fantastic. And I worked instructional league with Pam Postema, who up until Jen today being hired, Pam Postema got closest. She never umpired a regular season game, but she went to spring training with the National League, I think, for 3 straight years. I worked instructional league with Pam, and Pam, wonderful person. Pam was pretty good behind the plate, but she just didn't have a lot of instinct on the bases. And you're on the bases 3 out of 4 nights. So if you can't work the bases, you're in trouble in the major league. It's easier to hide somebody behind the plate than it is to hide them on the bases, to be honest with you. And when you say that, the instincts had nothing to do with gender. Her instincts were simply from playing softball to now playing umpiring baseball, which is being played at a much higher speed, where guys can throw the ball from the base of the fence all the way to home plate on the fly. And you have to be able to anticipate the play. You cannot rely on your reactions, because the fastest umpire is slower than the slowest player.
Anticipation.
You got to know that. You got to be able to figure out where's your play coming from. If the ball's hit here, if you play any sport, your natural instinct is to go toward the ball. Go toward the puck, always. And officiating is just the opposite. You actually have to oftentimes move away from it, move opposite, because the first thing you got to do is get out of the way. And the second thing is you got to get out of the way while still having an angle to call and see what you're responsible for. That is instinct. That is learned, And if you don't have some basic instinct for that, it's going to be tough. So this Jen is not being given anything. She's earned it. She deserves it. I'm happy for her. I'm happy for baseball. And I think it's a great day. I really do. I really, really do.
Agreed.
It's pretty cool.
It's awesome.
And like I said on my post, I said, NHL, you're next.
I hope so. And
Yeah.
I know a few that are ready for it. I mean,
Yeah, good.
I do women's college hockey. I assign Atlanta Hockey America. So
Great.
that's D1. So I'm in charge of that, and we have a lot of really good female officials. And then it's funny, the really good ones, they want to work the men. So I got a couple working the men as well.
Now you got something to work with there.
Yeah. So I have no problem working, the women and the men's side of things. It's great because they can handle it, and they're better than half my staff.
Sure. No, it's I think it's a big day. To be honest with you, I really, really do.
I think we talked about it before on the podcast about how, we think it's time for a female official in the NHL. And I think there is a few already working in the minors. And, I think I know of a few that are just as good, if not better than, most of the guys that are doing it right now in the NHL. So
Sure.
it's definitely
A question there. Are there any female linesmen?
Yes.
persons, I should say.
Yep.
Are there?
Yeah. There's
Is there?
one. There's one that's phenomenal that could do it tomorrow.
Is there an issue with breaking up fights at all?
Nope. No,
No.
she's probably tougher than half the guys I
Cool.
know. She's
That's even more cool. I think
like
that's
her
great.
commanding her face-offs, like her getting into scrums, no problem. And she's got good size, and she's a phenomenal skater.
Good.
And that, like, skating is the first thing you look for,
Absolutely.
and then communication for me is the second, and
Mhm.
then go down the line after that. But those are the two biggest things for me.
I loved
Yeah.
working hockey. I was like I said, I was at high school was a 2 referee system. That's it, no lines person. And then I did D3. I was a linesman in the 2 referee 1 linesman system.
Yep.
That wasn't around for very long, but and we all know it wasn't the greatest system in the world, but
Horrible.
I loved
Yeah.
it because I got to skate and it kept me in shape in the off season. And
Right.
I was really fortunate that we had 2 guys. Well, Greg Shepard was one.
I was gonna bring him up. Do you know the Shepherd's really good
Very
friend of
well.
mine? Yeah,
Very
I
well.
love Greg.
Shepard, the best.
I'm gonna have Derek on at some point. I
Perfect.
worked
No,
with him. I worked with both his kids. Yeah, great.
yeah,
I worked with
wonderful.
Derek actually
Did ya?
in the USHL and the East Coast League. He was in both
Yeah.
of them.
I know him very, very well. Derek is also really good friends with Mark Wagner, who
Yeah,
is in umpires in the major leagues. One
Yes.
of 3 of us from the St. Paul area that made it to the big leagues.
They're a big baseball family. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And Greg in his day when he was still on the ice, he worked with a guy named Jerry Krieger, and it was Krieger and Shepard. They worked
Yeah.
together all the time, and they were the benchmark. Those guys were head and shoulders above everybody else, even though there was a lot of really, really good officials here.
And they're good human beings too. That's the
Very
best
good
part.
human beings. And they wanted me as their linesman in D3. So I got to go out there with the 2 best.
That's awesome.
And one night, the first time I ever worked with them, I was thrilled. And we were getting ready to walk out the door to go on the ice just for the warm up. And Jerry says to Greg, he kind of pats him on the chest like this, and he goes, "How you feeling, partner?" And Greg says, "I'm good. I'm feeling good. How about you?" He says, "Yep, I'm good. I'm ready. Let's go." And I just watched that, and I've been on the field probably 1,000 games by then. Never seen that before. So after the game, I asked him about it. I said, what was that all about? He said, "Well, you know what, Cheats, we have families, we have jobs, we got, sometimes we're coming to the arena on the fly.
Yeah.
We got other things. We got kids at home. My wife might be mad about something or whatever. We got lives. And, if you're having trouble today, I want to know before we go out there. I don't want to find out the first time we have a skirmish in the corner and I'm in there by myself."
Yeah. I got you tonight, right?
And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I mean, I was like, wow. I started to incorporate that, like when if somebody worked on my crew, we're supposed to be there an hour and a half before the game because they want us there once the gates are open in case something happens. Because there's been times where there was a bench clearing during batting practice over some stupid thing or whatever. They want us to be at least in the ballpark, not down there watching it. And so I started with my crew. I said, okay, they could play cards, they could play cribbage, they could do that, whatever they want. But 6:30, put the cards away. Cards get put away. All right, we don't have to burn incense or anything like that. But I said, start thinking about what you got to be doing. I don't want you walking on the field thinking I should have thrown the king. You got it?
All right.
We got to get ready for work. Clear your head and go out there and take a look at who your starting pitcher is going to be. Think about, what?
Yeah.
Here's a class. I use this one all the time. I said, baseball, it's about 80 to 85% of all outs in a baseball game occur at first base. Now, if you go back to T-ball, Pee-wees, whatever level, even the family summer 4th of July picnic softball game, the fastest person leads off. Always and forever. So you walk on the field and you're the first base umpire, your chances are you're going to have a close play at first base right out of the chute. You better get that one right. Because if you kick it, you can have 15 more and get them all right, but they're not going to believe you the rest of the night because you
Trust
weren't
is
ready
lost.
for the
Yep.
first one. So anticipate it. Ricky Henderson's leading off. Guess what? Kenny Lofton, Vince Coleman. All right. And that goes back to what I said earlier about anticipating. You got to assume that it's going to be close right from the get go. You can't react and say, and that's one thing I see with guys today that kind of grinds my gears a little bit is I would tell my crew there's no such thing as a routine play.
Right.
It's routine when it's over. It turns out to be routine, but you get a two-hop ground ball to shortstop, and he fields it right at his chest, and a runner with average speed should be, but all of a sudden that ball sticks in his glove, and he's got a double clutch, and now the runner picks up on it, so he turns it on, and now you got one of these, and you weren't ready for it because you thought it was going to be wide open. You're going to pay for that. You got to have your angle, have your distance, and assume that it's going to be close. And you got to get it right out of the chute. You get the first one right, they'll leave you alone the rest of the night. But you miss the first one, it's an uphill battle the rest of the way.
So true.
And it just, you can't do it. It's the same. Richie Garcia was the best instructor, the best crew chief I've ever had. And everything he taught me, he not only taught me everything that I know, he taught me everything that he knows. He was very unselfish, and he also loved guys who were enthusiastic. And he taught me all those things about, clearing your head before you go on the field, and all those little things that were so important. And he would say, you have to find a way when you walk on the field, you have to find a way to demonstrate to them that you're ready.
Yep.
That you're here to work. I am here for this game. I am serious about this game, and I don't care how it works. You don't have to go goose stepping it out there or something like that. He goes, but don't go walking onto the rink or onto the field like you're walking through the zoo on a Sunday afternoon.
Be ready to go.
You're ready to go. Okay, you be polite, professional, and courteous, and let them know. And then when that first strike comes in there, you don't have to come out of your shoes, but give it something that lets them know you're ready.
Yeah.
And that's it. And Richie would always say, don't think that they don't notice, because they do. They notice. And that was the best advice I ever got. He'd say, I had Bob Davidson on my crew late in his career, and late in my career actually too. And Bob and I had never worked together. Bob's from Minnesota as well. And it was like June. And we're walking on the field. He says, Cheats, I've never been on a crew like this before. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, it's June 1st. We got one ejection. It's June. I said, well, there's a reason for it. He said, what is it? I said, because we work hard. We hustle, and they see it. I said, you maybe didn't like the fact that when you're on my crew, I require everybody, every time the ball's hit to the outfield, somebody goes out on that ball. Always. Now, some crews, they can do what they want. Not mine. No, I want somebody out there. All it takes is that thing to pass through the sun, and what was supposed to be a can of corn, now he's catching it off the top of his shoes, and we got an umpire not within 200 feet of that call. There's nobody to blame but us. Get out there. You don't have to sprint. You don't have to be fast. The whole key to the system is if you take off right away, we know who's going out, then everybody else can rotate and not have to run hard to get to the next spot. Right. It's designed, but if the guy waits, and now he says, oh shit, I got to get out there. Now that batter runner is halfway around second, and we got a guy 180 feet trying to get to home plate to cover a play at the plate. He's not going to make it. Right. But if you just hustle, and sure enough, that night, we had two teams, Kansas City and Pittsburgh. I think they combined, they were like 30 games out. And Bob's working third, and there's a fly ball out to left field, and Alex Gordon comes in and he dives and makes a really, really nice play. And Bob's right there. He's right there. Yep, that's a catch. And the next half inning or inning later, Gordon is going back out to left field, and he peels off and goes over to Bob. And he goes, hey, we really appreciate the effort. And he just went to left. And I said, it's what Richie told me 25 years ago. You got a guy managing a ball club, and they got no chance, and his job's on the line. He's trying everything possible just to get these guys to play hard. They don't need to look out there and see us mailing it in. Right. We got a job to do. It doesn't matter. It's easy to get up for the big games. That takes care of itself. It's those games that are there's no such thing as a meaningless game, but they're meaningless in the standings.
You got 7-8 playing each other, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Those were tough. Yeah, you're
It
right.
matters
That's a
to
good
somebody.
point. God,
It
those are
matters to
always hard.
somebody. Yeah. Oh yeah. And
And
so, and it comes down to something as little as, you want to put your hand up like this, or do you want to put your hand up? You got to, that you're into it. You are giving it what you got,
yeah, every
everything you
game.
got, I
Yeah,
should say. It matters. It matters.
right.
You're not going to get them all right. No one is. I tried my whole career to work a perfect game and I never succeeded.
Right.
But I never got, I mean, Joe Torre said this to me. A lot of managers said it over the years. He said, we always knew when your crew walked on the field on Friday night that umpiring was not going to be an issue for the weekend because they knew we might not get them all right, but we would give it everything we had. And I learned that. I didn't grow up with that. I was taught that by the best. And I always tried to teach my guys to do the same thing.
No,
And
that's a good lesson. That's
it is
that's
And,
awesome.
very
and
important.
it's amazing how umpiring and refereeing hockey and you can throw any sport in there. There's so much that is similar, and the communication piece, the effort piece, those little things that you can do. It really is applicable to any sport as far as the officiating is concerned. And we preach this to the young guys now, that we teach. Your signals alone
Right.
can, gain credibility
That's
and
crazy. Yeah.
gain respect. And, if you're out there throwing your arms around or not, being crisp and clean,
Right.
it's not good. It's not a good
No.
look. So,
And it's okay. It's also, if you're doing that, if you're sharp and, it's okay to smile once in a while too. They'll see that too. They'll appreciate the fact that you're enjoying it.
Mhm.
You're not screwing around. And a couple of the young guys early on, they got a little bit stylish, and I said,
Yeah.
Back off a little bit. Nobody was more stylish than I was, to be honest with you. But I knew when to stop. The guys would always imitate my strike call when I'd walk on the field, and I wouldn't say much. But the reason they imitated it was because they liked it, because they knew that I was trying to do a good job.
Right.
And again, I please don't take this as some sort of bragging session or anything like that. But I was taught this. But one day, I was working in Minnesota, which is where I live, and I'm working at the Metrodome, and it's Sunday morning, and I'm driving over to the ballpark, and Tom Kelly was managing the Twins at the time, and TK was an umpire's dream. If he came out, he had a legitimate beef. He not only he just let us go, and when he would say something, it was enough to make you bust out laughing. He would, for example, he didn't whine at all. He could he you call a pitch. You call a strike on one of his hitters. Say he thinks it's high or whatever. He goes, "Whoa, Timmy, what'd we do?" He thinks I'm mad at you.
Right.
Or the pitcher would look in on a pitch and Kelly'd yell at the pitcher. Goes, "That's okay. It's okay. He's a good umpire. He's a good umpire. He'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Get on the mound." And you go, "You mother."
Yeah. Right.
He's just digging you, and he's having fun doing it. But how can you not like it?
Right.
So I'm driving to the ballpark, and he has a Sunday morning half-hour show. Kelly was a very, very matter-of-fact kind of guy. He didn't rave about anything. He was just a baseball guy, and he had a great players. He developed that whole '87 team. He raised them all through the minor leagues. Somebody asked about Ken Herbeck, and he would say, "Well, he's just a talented kid that knows how to play the game," and that was it. He wouldn't rave any more than that. So I'm going over there, and some caller, calls in about, and umpiring comes up, and then of course my name comes up because the host of the show, I know him and stuff. My name comes up, and Kelly says, "I like when Timmy Tschida umpires our games because he always tries to do a good job." That is the greatest compliment you can get in any walk of life, no matter what you are, what you do, I should say, who you are, where you are. If you try to do a good job, whatever you're doing, who cannot appreciate that?
Right.
But that's the greatest compliment I ever got, was from a guy who doesn't give them.
That's
Jimmy
pretty cool.
Leland was like that too. Leland appreciated the effort, and when I got called up, my first game was in Chicago, and he was the third base coach for the White Sox. Now Jim came up through the Tigers organization, and he managed in Evansville, Indiana, and that's where all those guys, Parrish and Gibson and that whole '84 team, he managed all of them. He raised them, and but Sparky had the big league job, and Sparky Anderson again. I got along great with Sparky, and Sparky was fair, but Sparky never ever had a coach on his staff that could replace him. He was he was smart that way, right? So Leland had no shot of ever making the big league staff with Sparky. But in Evansville, he used to stay, he lived at the hotel where we stayed. And he would hang out with us every night after the games. And he wanted to learn the rules. All we talked about was rules. And, Jimmy was a catcher and he knew the game really well. And we'd chat about rules till 3 a.m, every night. And there was never anything the next day say, yeah, maybe you should get some sleep at night. There was none of that. That was all. He was just a good guy. And Tony La Russa and he managed against each other in the American Association. And when Tony got the White Sox job, the first thing he did was hire Jim as his third base coach. And so when I got called up, it was at Chicago, and Jimmy asked Tony if he found out that I was working my first game. And he asked Tony if he could take the lineup cards out tonight. Sure. So I got there, and he just handed Drew Coble the cards, and he stuck his hand out. He said, I always knew you'd get here. He said, you were great in the minor leagues, and you're going to be great here. I'm like, I almost fainted, I mean, it was just like, but those are the guys you remember, guys that appreciate it. And he always appreciated. And then when I started umpire, when he started to manage and I got him in Detroit, he would just come out and say, what do you got, Tim? What do you got? I said, well, I got obstruction on the, he said, yeah, that's what I thought. That looked like it to me, He was fair. He was just fair. And he didn't whine all night long. Again, if he came out on you, you listened because he probably had a legitimate gripe, but
Good stuff.
wouldn't trade it for anything, guys. It's, they paid me to do this all these years. What they don't know about us officials, and that's one thing that we got to keep amongst ourselves, is we try to get as much as we can, but little do they know that we'd have done it for nothing.
Right.
So true.
Yeah, that's so true. A lot of truth to that.
So true. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end on. I mean,
Okay.
Tim, want to thank you for coming on. This has been
This was
just
awesome.
an absolute great episode, and your insight, your connection to hockey. I mean, it's just awesome.
Good. Well, I will talk sports all night with people that know sports, and know officiating, because we have a different view.
Yeah.
And how many times have you heard from people about they never thought of it that way? Because when we tell them something about, well, this happened because of this,
Right.
they don't realize
What all that goes into it. You're right.
our perspective is pretty darn good.
It's one of the things that we've heard from a lot of our non-hockey fans and listeners. They love that insight into the world that not everyone gets and not everyone understands, and that's one of the things that a lot of people appreciate is that the referees don't do press conferences, the umpires don't do press conferences. You never get to ask them what was in your head, why'd you do that, what'd you do that for, and that's why a lot of people love what we're doing because we're giving them that insight, and you've given that insight into umpiring and Major League Baseball, which is just so cool.
Perfect. Well, you know what? If you get bored and you can't find any other guests, and you say, you got my number.
Oh,
I'm glad you called. I'm
I
glad
would
you
love
got
to
a hold
have you
of me.
back on.
I would
Absolutely.
do it anytime.
love
We just make sure we don't saturate it, and then maybe even I'll watch this, but the next time if we do something, make sure we're not going to repeat ourselves. Let's go down.
Yeah, we'll get to
go
points.
down a
Yeah,
different
I like it.
avenue and get
No,
into
I
some
love
other
that.
stuff.
Absolutely.
100%. Well, there was a
Because
few things, honestly, there was a few things that I wanted to get to that we didn't. So, and that's okay. We'll save it for the next time because,
a lot of good lessons
this has
in
been
there.
fantastic. And just hold on, so we can, after we wrap up, just to make sure we get everything in line.
Okay.
So that's going to do it for episode 74. of Chirping Zebras. I want to thank our sponsor, the Referees Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And also want to thank AOA Studios and up in Beverly. And we're in the virtual world tonight, but we always appreciate the work they do up there. And for Josh Dolan, our producer, for Tim Tschida, our guest, and for Gino Binder Jr., I'm Mark Riley. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time right here on Chirping Zebras.